When an organization is trying to reflect and improve their cybersecurity governance, once again, relying on the three dimensions of my framework: commitment, preparedness, and discipline. I'm going to start with commitment because at the end of the day, it is the C level executives who make the calls in terms of the resources, the time that will be devoted to securing the organization. So there has to be a buy in. For that buy in to happen, the C level executives will have to be informed. Like you shared this example of this belief that most of the vulnerabilities are related to Microsoft solutions or Microsoft devices. Now, these myths need to be dispelled. And that only happens through knowledge sharing, through greater awareness, through continuous training. And it really starts at the C level. Because only when the top management is convinced that we truly need an automated but effective defense, that will then trigger the next dimension, which is preparedness. That how do you build the automation architecture? Based on my research and engagements with organizations, I'm going to share the five core components of an automated defense infrastructure. And Rui, I'd like you to comment on them or expand on them soon after I'm done sharing these five. The first one has to do with asset discovery and continuous inventory. We are talking about the automated scanning of all endpoints, apps, and devices. The second has to do with the vulnerability prioritization engine. AI models rank risks by exploit business context and threat intelligence. So once again, we need, or organizations need to leverage the AI capabilities to not only identify vulnerabilities, but also to prioritize them. Because just like you were saying, it's not possible to address all the vulnerabilities at the same time because of for a variety of constraints. So you need to focus on the big ones and make sure you do them well. Number three has to do with automated patch deployment. We all know the importance of automated patching or the importance of policy-based orchestration that applies fixes across diverse environments. And we have to make sure that through automation, these patches are actually installed and not delayed. I will admit that I was one of those who would delay the patch deployment, but that flexibility has to be taken away from the user. Number four, automated remediation playbook. By that, I mean predefined scripts for common exploits. And finally, continuous testing and validation. So these are the five core components of an automated defense infrastructure. Roy, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I think it really walks through all of the steps organizations need to implement in order to deliver an effective vulnerability or even exposure remediation strategy. As you said, it starts with the scoping. You cannot fix what you don't know. And then, of course, you need to rank because reality shows that you cannot fix all of the problems as much as you'd like. And then throughout the fixing and actually validated that what you fixed worked, 100% agree that that is the way to tackle that enormous change. It's all the question of do organizations have what it takes to actually go and implement.
What has been your experience when you have been asked to implement an automated defense infrastructure?
I can share that I have been on the other side as an operator. I was actually in charge of one of the biggest pension funds in terms of IT and security. And back in the days, I used to also run that process where you schedule a vulnerability scan using a well-known tool and then patch using another tool. And I think one of the struggles that I faced back then, I'm talking over 10 years ago, and I think very much being faced today by organizations is volume. Given that you use multiple tools, it doesn't necessarily mean that if tool A found a problem, tool B can fix it or even agree that there is a problem. And C, even if you have a fix, like you said about the delay, I think it's even worse. Patching is hard. a lot of companies who ship products eventually imagine that they're also in race to release their product the fastest they can, whether it's Microsoft or Google or SAP. And when a patch is being announced, for some of them, they have the maturity to list a patch as a security-only patch, which lowers the friction, lowers the problems, meaning that when you patch, the concern is that things may not recover after you patch. This is why companies do not patch blindly, because things may break. Back to my point, that is the fact that I had the fix or had the patch doesn't mean I can go and implement. So fast forward and going with Vicarius, we are aware of that challenge, is that even if you have that resolution, which almost as an industry standard, when you have a vulnerability, you wait for the patch. I think what we are trying to educate the market on is that you have alternatives. There are things you can do, which is not only patch. For instance, a few years ago, there was a notorious vulnerability in Apache Tomcat. And at the time, while there was an exploit, there was no patch. But Apache Foundation was diligent enough and they said, do change that configuration and your vulnerability will be basically inexploitable. That's just one example out of many things that organizations can do in order to mitigate or remediate the threat. And the question is how that information is delivered to them. For most of them, it's not even in the spectrum of options that they consider when they want to remediate. And I think when you ask me about that space of vulnerabilities and what we can do, I think first of all, we need to recognize there is optionality. There are other things that organizations can do and can harness in order to address vulnerabilities and exposure. Definitely there is optionality, and definitely there are other strategies companies can take when they think of how to address vulnerabilities at scale and automatically.